Hello and welcome to episode 24 of the Ascendancy podcast. My name is Chris,
I'm Austin.
and in today's episode, we will be giving our critique of what we think is poor vegan messaging that we often see in the community. I've been vegan for 7 years now, Austin a little longer than me, I think, and we've been activists for most of that time. So we have a lot of experience, in this scene and the activism scene. We've seen a lot of activism styles, a lot of messaging styles throughout the years. Some come and go. Some of them still kind of prevalent even today in 2025. So today's episode is just going to be our thoughts on certain ineffective messaging styles that we see, and we don't have any empirical evidence for our thoughts today. This is just our experience, just kind of relaying what we think. It's tough to find empirical data for some of these points. You're not going to find a study isolating public perceptions of a certain variable. It might exist out there, but we're not presenting that today. So like I said, we're critiquing the ideological weaknesses, the poor messaging, and the widespread simping for non-vegans in the vegan movement. So, as you guys probably understand already, who are watching, who are vegan, you understand that veganism, it's often misrepresented or made out to be some weak, soy boy stance, as opposed to being seen as a very serious moral obligation, and as a very serious justice movement. So just to clear the air for any non-vegan listeners, veganism is defined as the ethical principle that humans should live without exploiting animals. It's not a diet, trend, or some lifestyle, some hippie lifestyle. It's purely a justice movement seeking to abolish the commodification, the property status of animals. So it's just a matter of respecting their sentience, their autonomy, their childlike experience of the world. They're sentient conscious beings with a will to live and a desire to not be exploited and subjugated. The same kind of basic interests that we humans have. It's just extending that basic decency and respect to animals. It's not a religion, it's not a cult, it's not a dogma, it's just a matter of respect. We shouldn't just respect dogs and cats, household pets. We should really respect all sentient beings and not have them under our fist of subjugation. So with that out of the way, as I explained, veganism, it's misrepresented and misunderstood, and that's partly the fault of vegan activists, ourselves. The way that we do activism, the way that we speak about the injustice, the way that we speak about veganism, and we're just critiquing that today. So I'll lend it over to you, Austin, to get us going here.
Yeah, well said, Chris. There is a very widespread problem within the vegan movement of it being misrepresented and the messaging just being bad. One of the most common expressions that we hear is eat pussy, not animals. This is often plastered on signs and on shirts and in bios, and vegans just regurgitating messages like this. So, at surface level, what's wrong with this phrase, eat pussy, not animals? Firstly, veganism is not a diet. We're talking about eating, something as opposed to animals. It's making it seem like the only form of animal exploitation or the thing that we're trying to stop is the consumption of animals. But in reality, we're trying to target the ideology, the mindset, the actions of the domination and exploitation of animals in all of their forms, not just the dietary component of that. Second is that this makes a mockery of the animal exploitation. It's taking an extremely serious subject from the perspective of the victims, their enslavement, slaughter. Animals are ground alive like chicks in the egg industry. They're separated from their babies, like dairy cows. They're separated by sex and then slaughtered or continue to be exploited based on them. In the case of all of these animals, these are very serious injustice. To interject some kind of human sexuality or some kind of a joke messaging into this topic really makes a mockery of these animals. And it reminds me actually of this meme from maybe 10 years ago, this dicks out for Harambe It's like people obviously view dicks out for Harambe as a joke. So why in this very, very serious matter of animal exploitation would you want to interject some kind of a sexual joke? And then the next thing is it makes vegans look like dumb whores when you're out here talking about your pussy or eating pussy or something like that. How can you be taken seriously as an educator or a philosopher or someone trying to fight against a serious social injustice when you're talking about your genitals or other people's genitals? It does no good as far as actually educating people or making use of the limited time of interaction we have with any non-vegan. With this messaging, what does it do to educate a non-vegan on the reality of animal exploitation? Absolutely nothing. It's a waste of time.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really well said, Austin. And ever since it became sort of popular of a catchphrase several years ago, I never got behind it, never said it myself. It's just very vacuous and empty. It's like this little funny one-liner, like the Harambe line, and it doesn't advance the ball. It doesn't actually get people to understand veganism, educate them about it, hold them accountable. It's like any non-vegan walking down the street, if they see your shirt says that they'll be like, oh, that's funny, and then just they'll just think veganism's a diet, that it's not serious, that there aren't true victims in the scenario. It's just like, oh, eat not animals. It's like, oh, that's funny, haha, and just move on with their day. Nothing happens. Where you could have had, some type of messaging, whether it be on a sign or wearing a shirt that actually has like impactful vegan messaging on it. I've seen thousands of better, vegan shirts you could wear than that. It's just stupid, and it completely trivializes the victims. So I think that was really well said. So going to the next point is going to be plant-based diet activism. So, advocating for a plant-based diet strictly from, a health or environment or a self-interest perspective. So I want to say at the outset that there is some utility in advocating for plant-based diets. They do have health benefits and they are easier on the environment. But when we're trying to communicate veganism isn't any of those things. Veganism, it's a justice movement seeking to, like I explained, attain the liberation of animals, just get that basic respect for them, to have humans stop exploiting them. When we're talking about human health or environment, it doesn't actually get to that core issue, that core, supremacist mindset, that predatory mindset that humanity has toward animals. So you're kind of you're using messaging that is, you're trying to like sneakily find a way into their brains to make them care about the animals by using self-interest. I just don't think that's a good idea. I think it just undercuts the victims. It trivializes their injustice. Because if you think about previous injustices in times past where humans were exploited for their labor, if you think of slavery, it would have been ridiculous to advocate for, we should stop enslaving people because it's bad for the environment. The boats use a lot of coal and fuel to get across the ocean, and it's bad for the health of the sailors. It's like, what the obvious injustice here is the ruthless enslavement and exploitation of these humans. They deserve their freedom. They deserve their basic rights. So it's the same in this context. It's like, I think when you look at the plight of the animals, that should be really up, like foremost, like really up primary as the main, part of your messaging. When you understand that, and health and environment, it can play a part, but I don't think it should be like 90% plus or 80% plus of your activism. Like if you're a vegan, if you're some type of, plant-based food organization, like, okay, I understand that's their MO. They're talking about it from, that's their whole organization. But if you're an activist on the ground, you're vegan, it's like you're undercutting the animals by just talking about health and environment and self-interest. And another point I want to make here is that a lot of quote unquote ex-vegans, I call them ex-vegans because they were just eating a plant-based diet. They weren't also avoiding animal, skins, products tested on animals. They still probably went to zoos and stuff. A lot of these ex-vegans, they say they went vegan for health or environment. So, and I'm sure you've seen that, Austin, as well, where people, they just don't have that moral conviction. There's a low chance that they'll actually stick to the plant-based diet long term because they're just doing it for these self-interested ways. They just have little staying power relative to that moral conviction, like I spoke about. And we had Gary Yourofsky on our podcast a few episodes ago, the legendary animal rights activist and vegan animal liberationist educator, and he explained like when I tell people about this, from the moral side, like we don't see the ex-vegans coming from the moral side. It's the people who are going vegan for health and environment that are always becoming ex-vegans, making veganism look bad, making it look like a diet, making it look like the plant-based diet is ineffective because look at all these people who stop eating that way and call themselves ex-vegan and make their whole social media brand about how they had a horrible experience as a vegan when they never were. They just ate a plant-based diet for like health or environment. So that's another problem with these self-interest advocacy messages, and it belittles the ultimate obligation of respecting animals as an end in itself. It shouldn't be a means toward some benefit for yourself, personally. Animals deserve to be respected and not be exploited by humans just as a matter of principle. And you do not need to personally benefit from going vegan. Although there could be benefits of a plant-based diet, you don't need those. Even if we didn't have any personal benefits from living vegan, it still would be our ultimate moral obligation. So that's what I have to say on that. Any thoughts on that, Austin, before we go to the next point?
Yeah, I thought your analogy to human slavery was very compelling. I mean, no one would argue against any injustice that humans face based on self-interest. So how are animals different from humans, or that becomes acceptable to do? And I think that really undermines what veganism is. When we talk about any sort of benefit to being vegan and we relay that as a principal message, we actually missed the opportunity of accurately explaining what veganism is and giving people the power themselves to then take that knowledge as a moral obligation to be vegan and be vegan for life. And that is exactly how we get these people who call themselves as ex-vegans. They became vegan, or really a plant-based dieter, for some kind of intrinsic benefit or self-interest. But what happens when a person is on a diet? They cheat on their diet. What happens if someone does something out of environmental concern? Sometimes they have some kind of opportunity cost where they say, hey, I'm doing it for the environment, but I do something else to offset my environmental impact, so I'll cheat a bit. And these people, of course, were never vegan to begin with. And gets me to the next point. And this is vegans dating and having sex, hooking up with non-vegans. And this isn't something I want to get into too in depth. We've done a video before on dating, but this is especially a very bad look for vegan activists. Like, okay, let's say you just went vegan and you're new to it. I'm not saying to just immediately break up with whoever you're dating or something like that, but if you're an animal rights activist and you genuinely think it's morally reprehensible to prey on or exploit animals, what kind of a message does it send to say that you're willing to be intimate with or date someone who preys on the animals? Like, if I'm a non-vegan and someone was telling me, oh, you shouldn't prey on animals, that's a moral atrocity, but then they're saying, oh, by the way, here's my phone number, call me, text me, let's go on a date, I'd be like, okay, so it's not that bad. It's not that big of a deal. It's not that big of an injustice. And again, this only when it comes to animals is preying on them, not a deal breaker. So if you're a vegan activist and you're willing to date or be intimate with non-vegans, you're putting out the message into the world that what they do to animals isn't so bad. It's not a deal breaker when it comes to dating. So why would they take you seriously? Why would they take the plight of the animal seriously? And I wouldn't. If I was a non-vegan, I obviously wouldn't be taking that seriously. If some vegan woman would be willing to date me, or for women, if some vegan man is willing to date you, why would you take it seriously? It's not even a deal breaker when it comes to that.
Yeah, that's really well said. And like you said, we actually did an episode on this in further depth. So if you wanted to go back and check that out, I think it was I can't remember the episode number, but it was probably earlier this year. We talked about it in further depth. And like you said, Austin, it just gives those mixed signals. I think we have to conduct ourselves at a high level if we're to be taken seriously and to advance the animals' liberation. And when we're conducting ourselves in these inconsistent ways, it just doesn't add up in the eyes of the public. They're not going to really see that you take this seriously. Whereas if you're like a hardline activist who says like, listen, I'm not going to date or be intimate with non-vegans, it shows people you know what's up. Like you're really serious about this, and you're probably going to have a better time influencing, the people in your life to actually change if you have these really set in stone standards. I can think of many instances where I'm on Reddit and there's a lot of threads that get posted about, I'm a vegan woman and my non-vegan partner is just never changing and he never cares when I talk about it with him and I try to show him the documentaries and he doesn't care. Well, the problem is you consented to start a relationship with him in the first place and you didn't have these strict boundaries. So if at one time and up till this point it's been okay to be intimate and sexual with him, why would he suddenly be snapped out of his malaise or his moral laziness now? Like you consented to start the relationship on this footing where it's okay that you prey on and exploit animals. I'm still going to be intimate with you. Like it's like you set yourself up for this, buddy. Like and it's mostly vegan woman and then the non-vegan man scenario, but it probably does happen in the if you reverse the roles. But yeah, it's just ineffective messaging, and it just doesn't get the point across for the animals, and it's probably just going to set yourself up for a lot of suffering anyway. Just every 3 times a day trying to argue about what to eat, avoiding like zoos when they want to go to a zoo. It's like why would you want all that? I know it shrinks your dating pool, but I think, like I said, we have to conduct ourselves at a higher level if we're to be taken seriously. I kind of think of ourselves as soldiers of truth, really trying to make a real big difference for the animals. And there's certain things that we just have to, roll with the punches. You'll find that vegan partner. You just gotta, work on yourself, improve yourself. I don't want this to become too long of a rant because we already did an episode on this. But as you can see, Austin and I are pretty passionate about this specific thing, for sure. So going into the next point, it's going to be lingerie nudist activism. So whether that be man or woman, we've seen posts on social media of activists, really worldwide in several major cities, just going out in the streets in very little clothes or wearing like body paint to make them look nude, and they have vegan messaging on billboards, and they're walking around or parading, vegan messaging, stop oppressing animals, or even worse, eat pussy, not animals. So the problem with this is that it just degrades yourself in the eyes of the public. Whether you like it or not, it's just objective reality that when people see this kind of conduct, they just take you less seriously. You just kind of making yourself out to be just this piece of meat, this sex object. You're reducing yourself to like, look, I have to become completely naked for you to take me seriously. Like, you have to pay attention to me. It's like the public just laughs. Men walking by are going to take pictures because they think, oh, that woman's hot. Like, just looking at her breasts. He's not looking at the message on your billboard or your little plaque, your little sign. Like, you're just completely getting away from the actual message that has to be taken seriously, because you're reducing yourself, like I said, to this sex object. Most people are just going to laugh at you or, just be turned on by your body. It's like, what are we doing? This is not the message we're supposed to be, putting out there for animals. Why do you have to be nearly naked to do activism? You can get a lot of attention and conversations going just having clothes on like a normal person. Like, it doesn't have to be resorted to that where you're like completely nude. And it seems like it's really just an excuse to get attention from people rather than a sincere effort to promote veganism. I think these people just have this maybe insecurity, or their egos need to be stroked by having a lot of attention and eyes on them for doing this, shocking, scantily clad like experiment I just think it's just a joke, absolutely a joke, and vegans shouldn't be doing that. What do you think about that, Austin?
Yeah, man, I'm just very lucky that wasn't my personal introduction to veganism. Because if I was a non-vegan and I saw that on the street where they're like in lingerie or holding these signs that eat pussy, not animals, if I saw that, I would think, oh, that's some kind of just bullshit. I wouldn't even want to listen to what they're saying because the optics of that, from my perspective, are these are people who are unintelligent and I wouldn't take what they say seriously. And that's, me personally. And I suspect a lot of people have a similar perspective on that to me. But if I try to put myself in the perspective of someone else seeing that, what message does it send to non vegan men? Oh, look, me eating a cheeseburger has led to these women here in their lingerie and they're out here protesting for me. I'm going to go eat another burger and I'm going to give them another reason to be out here doing this. What kind of negative reinforcement does this send them? I mean, maybe if you have some very disgusting naked person out wherever they're exploiting animals, maybe that would aid a little bit. But trying to somehow reward them by showing them scantily clad women is somehow going to make them stop exploiting animals. I don't really see the logic within doing that. There should be a negative social pressure to try to get them to change, or rather than focusing on social pressure, good or bad, why not take the opportunity to educate people? And that's ultimately what we're doing. We're trying to get people to think on a higher level, trying to educate them. So why not take up that time showing them the reality of animal exploitation, what it actually looks like, actually showing the animals having their throats slit or ground alive or tormented in all these various ways, which are just the base level reality of animal exploitation, no matter how it's done or what kind of labels are put on it, like humane or organic or bio. This is the truth of it. And then have these hard conversations with people and use the Socratic method and ask people questions. I think that will be vastly more effective than some kind of public display of nudity. And going from there, something that I view as a massive issue within the vegan movement is passive behavior. And this is subservience, having a victim mentality, being apologetic, just having a weak character. There are far too many instances where I've seen vegans talk about how they get bullied by their friends or their family or someone at their university or their job, and they feel like some kind of an outcast or something like this, and they want sympathy. Vegans need to lose this kind of a victim mentality. We need to be the victor, not the victim. So if you're in some kind of a discussion or someone is trying to chastise you for standing up for the animals, remember the plight that the animals face. Remember their perspective in this matter. Remember that you are their only hope for liberation and freedom and an end to this injustice, and conduct yourself accordingly. So if someone's giving you a hard time, no. You're not the victim, you're the boss. You're not the one being bullied, you're the bully. You need to put people in their place. You need to be socially dominant. You need to be willing to stand up for yourself, for the animals, and that's how you're going to create change around you. Like, I hoped, my whole immediate family go vegan, my friends go vegan, many people online and in person with activism through AV go vegan. I didn't do any of that by being a pushover or being a victim or letting people walk all over me, but standing up fiercely for the animals. And ultimately, people are going to respect that. So this entire victim mentality needs to be eliminated from the equation. You're not an outcast or a pariah or weak or weird because you're vegan. You're someone who's trying to make the world a better place, standing up against evil and the ultimate injustice. So we need to conduct ourselves accordingly.
Yeah, that's really well said. And like you said, this is a problem in the vegan movement for sure. I think vegans have to upgrade their firmware and just have a little more strength in their character. I mean, like you said, we are on the right side of history. We are combating the world's largest injustice, and vegans, obviously, for digesting this and changing, it does show strong character in some respect. But when it comes to our social interactions, you also have to be strong there as well. You can't allow yourself to be bullied. Uh, Most of the time when you're being picked on and bullied, it's because you are allowing it. You are reinforcing it by not standing up for yourself, by not pushing back and unequivocally telling people to their face that what they're doing to you is unacceptable and that you will cut them off and just stop talking to them forever unless they stop. And if you stand up for yourself, you're gonna have a lot more better results in life. I know it's easier for men to do this because we have testosterone, and we can build our physiques to become very dominable and imposing. But even if you're a woman, you can still work on just having boundaries, just saying no. Enough is enough. You can't keep picking on me like this, or I'm out of here. We're not going to be friends anymore. I'm going to move out of, if you still live with your parents, like, you got to be able to push back. And ultimately, you'll be taken more seriously, and the plight of the animals will be taken more seriously if you're willing to stand up and not be a victim and not just get bullied. So yeah, I think that was well said, Austin. It's really important to address that in this episode. So the next point here is having OnlyFans. So I've seen online several activists having OnlyFans links in their bios. On one hand, they're talking about animal rights and veganism, but they are also selling their bodies on OnlyFans to make money. And I just think this is just dumb and poor, messaging, a poor strategy for activism. It decreases the respect that others have towards you. That's just human nature. It's just the way the world is, and I don't foresee that changing. There's a lot of progressive effort being made to, make, and it's, to some extent, I guess it's been successful to liberate, sexuality of men and women, and to just, willy-nilly have 1,000 body count, and it's fine. You can, sell your nudes online and do all this stuff and just be scantily clad. But the reality is, I think the majority of humans are just not down with that. They're not gonna keep bending the knee and allowing that to just continue. And it just decreases the respect others have towards you. It just does. There's a lot of people who aren't of the left, who aren't progressive in that respect. They do value, what's the word? They do
Modesty.
value modesty. Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Austin. They value modesty, and they're just not going to take your message seriously if they see you're also an OnlyFans model. And it just pulls valuable attention away from your message and from the animals, and it directs it towards your OnlyFans. People are going to be spending time and possibly money, looking at your body, looking at what you're doing in the bedroom, and you're making money off of it, which may help you, continue your activism. But in the net, I think it's not effective because you're taking probably in most cases male attention, male gaze away from the animal rights message and towards your body. That's not what we want. We want people to, come to our work, come to our YouTube channels, our social media channels, and just be presented with the vegan message, and whatever hobbies you may have. If you go to the gym, or you talk about self-improvement, but also you talk about veganism and activism. You want people to just be exposed to like the actual thing that matters, so they're not distracted. And they see you have OnlyFans, they're gonna be like, oh, I can go here and look at her boobs and her butt. It's like, what are we doing? Like, it's just shooting yourself in the foot. You're not gonna be taken seriously. You're just redirecting resources and energy towards, lustful stuff. It's just not effective. So we wanted to include that here. What do you think about that, Austin?
I mean, I see it as exploiting the plight of the animals as a monetary venture, is ultimately what it is. I see these animals being exploited and they intertwine like this cause for the animals into this type of online prostitution. So they're basically taking this animal exploitation and jumping in and trying to profit off of it. And I think a lot of these people are fake vegans. I personally wouldn't trust them being in the animal rights game long term, or their messaging or their understanding of veganism philosophically. The other thing is that as vegan activists, we are ultimately educators. This is a philosophical, ethical stance. It would be akin to having a professor of philosophy have an OnlyFans or present themselves in this lowly way, making a fool of themselves, making a clown of themselves, while trying to raise the bar when it comes to morality, when it comes to virtue. Not that veganism is a virtue, it's a moral obligation, but I suppose people would get the gist of what I'm saying, is that it undercuts the messaging. And also, it doesn't put people in the right frame of mind to be responsive to this extreme injustice, to changing their behavior. Like, you think that if you put like OnlyFans, link in bio, or whatever, and you're trying to make these low IQ people horny and clicking on this to see nudity online, you think that's going to put them in the right mentality to be receptive to changing their behavior and understanding that what they're doing is an injustice? No, they're going to make it's going to make vegans out to be dumb whores. It's going to make our message be taken less seriously. The general public is going to think we're stupid. So why would we put ourselves, and therefore the animals, in that kind of a position? It makes no sense to me. One phrase I've seen thrown out quite a bit is 1 million imperfect vegans are better than one perfect vegan. And this is always in response to hardline vegan messaging, people accurately portraying veganism as what it really is, or holding people accountable when they promote either a plant-based diet or reducitarianism. So they say, oh, whoa, no, don't shame people for being reducitarian. 1 million imperfect vegans are better than one perfect vegan. And this is creating a false dichotomy. There's no evidence, nothing to support that having strong and accurate and truthful vegan messaging will somehow result in less vegans. And in fact, the most influential and successful animal rights activist and educator, Gary Yourofsky, the person who influenced me personally to be vegan, and Chris as well, had a hardline message. Gary Yourofsky didn't promote a plant-based diet or reducitarianism. He promoted veganism. So there's no evidence to support this claim that these people are going to even reduce, and that doesn't solve the actual problem. Like, this problem is ideological in nature. You have 8 billion people now on Earth thinking that it's morally acceptable to prey on and exploit and dominate animals. The only way that will end is if we reach a critical mass of people who understand that exploiting animals is a moral wrong. Once we have that as the baseline, the foundation, why give people either a watered down version of the truth or a false message? Why not portray veganism accurately as it is, as a principle against human exploitation of animals, and let them decide what they do with that message? Maybe you give someone the greatest vegan messaging you can possibly deliver, and maybe they'll become an animal rights activist. Maybe they'll get many people to go vegan, or maybe they'll just become a plant-based dieter or something like that. But why not go out on the best foot and give them the best possible opportunity to change? And that includes holding them accountable when they say that they're going to merely reduce why not say, hey, you wouldn't reduce when it comes to any human injustice. You wouldn't say, oh, I'm going to be a reducitarian when it comes to beating my wife. I'm going to beat my wife one time per week instead of every day. Am I a good person? Now you say, no, don't beat your wife at all. Don't exploit animals at all. It's just a consistent moral perspective.
Yeah, I think that's all really well said. And going back to the statement that 1 million imperfect vegans are better than one perfect vegan, there's more issues with that as well, is that it's a utilitarian calculus. It's making it seem like veganism is just about reducing the net amount of suffering in the world when it's not that. That is a consequence of the ending of animal exploitation, but it's not the main like priority or prerogative. So it's already understanding what veganism is. It's not about reducing the amount of suffering in the world. And another problem with it is that it makes it seem like being vegan is this really unattainable, really difficult standard to get to. It's like, if you can't be vegan, well, at least you can be imperfect and eat cheese once a week or eat meat twice a week. At least you can be an imperfect vegan. It just makes it seem like this is something super hard to do, and it's not. It really isn't. There's literally homeless vegans, there's very low income vegans, there's vegans from all walks of life, all ethnicities, all backgrounds, all locations, making it happen. So it's like a bigotry of soft, low expectations, where it's like, well, we'd rather have you be imperfect than just be perfect. And it's just a false dichotomy. It's very simple to be vegan. It's very easy. Once you have a strong moral conviction, you figure out the how very simply, very quickly, especially with ChatGPT and this AI technology that exists. You can literally have this, philosopher, PhD rather level, expert in your pocket with ChatGPT. It can help you make it happen, and it also just makes veganism be taken less seriously if we have a bunch of vegans who are imperfect and are cheating once a week and eating cheese at the family cookout. Or it's like you're just not taken seriously, and it doesn't actually address the ideological supremacist predatory mindset that humans have. So if you look at an activist like Gary Yourofsky, who we all strive to be in our own respect, he was like a one-man army. He did thousands of classroom lectures all over the world, but mostly in the US. And just one man with a hardline direct vegan messaging directly influenced hundreds of thousands, probably millions of people to go vegan, especially through his exposure to his viral speech here on YouTube. So it's like, no, there's no empirical evidence for this. And also in practice, we could see multiple instances where there's these very successful activists who are just kind of doing their own thing, or they may have a small team, and they're able to have thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people go vegan because of them and become activists to also get out there and speak the message. And that just is an exponential effect on the impact that they have. And when you have these imperfect vegans that don't understand what veganism is, they're not doing activism, how much impact are they actually having? Like they aren't doing shit. But you just have, that hardline messaging, whether it's yourself as an activist or as a group, like you guys can have way more impact. So it's just, vegans shouldn't be having this reducitarianism bullshit. They shouldn't be having these low expectations of people. Like it's very simple. We can do this. So the next point here, and it's something that was more popular, I think, a few years ago, but I still see it now, is the simping for slaughterhouse workers. So you'll see posts on social media where vegans are talking about the PTSD and the mental health issues that slaughterhouse workers have, that these are terrible places to work, and they suffer from suicidal ideation, alcoholism, drug abuse, because obviously they're doing a job that is horrible, most people wouldn't like to do. The problem with that is that it blurs the lines between who are the true victims here. Supposed vegans, supposed animal rights activists who are supposed to be dedicating their work to the liberation of animals. Instead, they're spending their time advocating for humans who work in these facilities, who directly slaughter and eviscerate these animals on a daily basis. It's like, it doesn't make sense. And these slaughterhouse workers themselves, they're not vegan either. they're going home or they're in the break room eating the body parts of animals. They're not vegan, so it's like why would we spend our valuable time advocating for the oppressors of the animals that we claim to care about? It just doesn't add up at all. And there's also many psychopathic slaughterhouse workers that have been captured on film, literally gleefully slaughtering animals, making fun of their suffering, making fun of their plight, and looking just like they enjoy the job. These people do not deserve our sympathy whatsoever. It should be reserved for the animals. We're animal rights activists. We're not human rights activists. There are groups that advocate for the rights of workers and their well-being. Let those groups do that. Let them do that. It's our job to speak for the animals the way we'd want to be spoken for. If you were a pig being prodded into a gas chamber, how would you feel if your liberator was spending time trying to help the person prodding you into the gas chamber? You'd be like, "What the hell, dude? I'm about to be murdered, and you're talking about the guy killing me? What are we talking about?" It's just ridiculous, and it's just the fact that humans aren't like being forced to work at these places. Like, I know there's certain areas where there's not a lot of job opportunity, but if someone really, and they should, if someone really understood the immorality of exploiting and slaughtering thousands of animals every day in these four walls, they would find a way to work a different job. They would go somewhere else. They wouldn't settle for working in such a psychopathic, evil like facility. Like, they would make it happen. They're not being forced to work there at gunpoint. They're choosing to work there. So ultimately, I have no sympathy for slaughterhouse workers, and I don't think vegans should either. We shouldn't be talking about their plight. A lot of these people enjoy their work, quote unquote work. So yeah, that's my thoughts. What do you think, Austin?
Perfectly said. These people aren't vegan. They don't think what they're doing is morally wrong. So why would we advocate for them and try to get them some kind of better working conditions or say anything in their favor when they support their own work? They consume the end product of the animal exploitation that we seek to abolish. They directly exploit and prey on these animals. And I've had many altercations with slaughterhouse workers, and they're some of the most violent and detestable, psychotic and sadistic people on the face of the earth. They've given me and other activists death threats. They despise us and they want to kill us. And obviously they're animal victims, so why would we kiss their asses or make them out to be victims? It's insane and it's pathetic. And with no other injustice would we advocate for the people committing the atrocity and saying, "Oh no, the person who's forcing innocent beings into the gas chamber, that guy's the victim." With no other injustice would humans do that, except when the victims are animals, and that's a hypocritical double standard.
Yeah, those are some good points, Austin. And rounding out the video here, so what are like the consequences to these kinds of messaging and these kinds of activism styles?
Yeah, so three main ones. The first one is that it trivializes the injustice, and the vegan message is taken less seriously by non-vegans. When we have messaging like "eat pussy, not animals," we have vegans with OnlyFans, we have vegans being sycophantic and submissive to non-vegans and talking about getting bullied and things of this nature. What does this show to non-vegans? That we're people they shouldn't take seriously, that our message isn't something serious. And I think it's so important to be professional and educational and come off at a higher status and level so that way people take us seriously. People aren't going to stop and reflect on what someone is saying if they view them as beneath themselves or they view them as crazy or stupid or detestable in some other way. So we really need to hone in on our messaging and how we present it and how we conduct ourselves. The next thing is that it makes a mockery of the animal's oppression and also of ourselves as activists. Again, with no other injustice would people be doing these things. I mean, imagine yourself in the perspective of the animals. Would you want people who are laser focused on ending your exploitation? They work and act and think almost as though they're a part of a military or professional organization? Or would you want people making OnlyFans and exploiting your plight for profit and dating and hooking up with the people who oppress you? We need a hardline stance to be convincing and to stop making a mockery from the animal's perspective. And then the last thing is that veganism is misunderstood and misrepresented. Veganism has one true definition, and that is the principle that we shouldn't exploit animals. When we have people walking around calling themselves vegan, even thinking that they're activists, and completely misrepresenting what it is to be vegan, this is how you create ex-vegans. This is how you have such a large movement of people who don't even know what it is they're advocating for and fighting against. So we need to understand veganism, and we need to have proper messaging. And veganism is not a utilitarian movement. It's not a welfarist movement. It's not a movement of reducing suffering. When we convey it as all of these things, we create loopholes for people to exploit animals, to justify preying on them. Why not give people the ability to understand what veganism actually is, give them the tools, and explain how it's something that is simple to grasp and simple to implement, and actually give them the confidence and the understanding to live vegan long?
Yeah, those are really good points, and wraps up the consequences of the previous messaging styles that we were criticizing pretty well. So what we view as the alternative and want to present as the alternative, the kind of quick 101 guidebook for how activists should conduct themselves, we think is just having honest, direct, logical, fact-based education as a huge majority of your activism. 85%, 90% of your time that's spent. It should have hardline messaging, just not sugarcoating the truth, telling it how it is, telling people that they are responsible and are causing animals to be holocausted, to be stabbed to death in mass, and just having that accountability, just telling the truth as it is, and that explaining that veganism, it's a moral obligation, that animals ought not be violated by you, that reducitarianism isn't enough. And a point that I forgot to make earlier is that people often reduce anyway when we present the vegan message to them, because they feel guilty on some level, as they should. So we shouldn't be promoting reducitarianism. It often happens as a byproduct of having direct hardline messaging to go vegan. And vegans should really take their identities as activists more seriously and conduct ourselves more professionally if we want to be effective. So that means just taking care of yourself, obviously sleeping well, being presentable, not having OnlyFans, not depending on using your body to get attention, not being intimate with non-vegans, just really taking yourself professionally as if you worked in a professional organization advocating for animals. And when it comes to speaking to people, you're going to find people who aren't reachable. You educate them about what's going on, you hold them accountable, and they just give you the merry-go-round of excuses. You debunk a couple of them and they just keep giving them to you. Just move on to the next person. There's going to be people out there who aren't reachable, but you've done your job as an activist at that point. It's not a failure that you didn't influence them to become vegan. You did your job. Just move on to the next person. Don't get stuck on your friends and family. Those are often the hardest people to influence. Austin had good success on his end, but other activists often haven't. And as we said, we had Gary on our podcast a few episodes ago, and he's the most effective activist we've ever seen, and he's never influenced anyone in his family or any of his friends to go vegan. So don't be stuck there. There's always a more open person around the corner. Just move on, and with enough of us doing our part, we'll get closer to that vegan world over time. So I'll lend off the outro to you here, Austin, and we'll wrap this one up.
Yeah, Chris, brilliantly well said and great advice for activists. And the animal's oppression will only be taken seriously by the public if we take our activism and our conduct seriously. With no other injustice do activists take themselves as unseriously as when the victims are animals. So, this is the most dire battle of morality in human history by scale, by degree of injustice, and it's interacted with in the most unserious way. And if we're going to be perceived differently, if this movement is going to be perceived differently and taken seriously, we have to stop this. We have to stop all of this. We need to be professional, dialed in, educational, asking the hard questions and showing the truth, showing the reality of the animal exploitation as how it is. We need to be disciplined and militant, not violent, not crazy, not extreme, but militant in terms of precision and seriousness and how we conduct ourselves as activists. So that's my outro. Thank you for watching and for making it this far. We appreciate it. Leave your comments below if there's anything that we missed that you see within the vegan movement that's widespread that we haven't touched on. Let us know. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you for watching.
Peace.